With Horner out, the answer is simply lovely. Max Verstappen is the captain now. And it's hard to imagine Toto being able to outmaneuver this particular gesture from Red Bull. I don't expect Verstappen.com racing logos on the Red Bull car anytime soon, but the biggest obstacle to Max's vision, gone. I believe that 2028 is still his cutoff because, at the age of 31 by then, with nearly 300 race starts and a 14-year career behind him, no one can say he hadn't left a mark in Formula 1. If we are only going to be seeing potentially 3 seasons left of Max Verstappen's influence in the sport, where is he going to spend them? Is he going to remain with Red Bull, head off to Mercedes, maybe even a cheeky move to Aston Martin, or maybe none at all? Perhaps somewhere unexpected. His manager's cryptic remarks suggest one priority though, winning again, wherever that may be, but more on that later. So do keep watching to find out that particular chestnut in full. And if you like what I've got to say, then maybe drop a like on the video, or maybe a little bit of a cheeky tickle on the subscribe button. Thank you. But regardless, Christian Horner's departure, albeit with a potential £50 million golden parachute or not, changes everything at Red Bull. The team's most controversial figure has now left the building, or at least has been sidelined. It depends on what you hear, because even though he's no longer the team principal or the CEO, he does, according to some sources like Coffee Corner Motorsport, have some sort of directorship remaining, so he's almost in the shadows somewhere, skulking around, waiting for his next move, depending on what happens next year. But whatever the case, he no longer holds the keys. And that gives the Verstappen camp, including Max, his father Jos, his manager Raymond Vermeulen, more avenues to explore in negotiations with Red Bull. As far as I'm concerned, the negotiation process has been completely reset. Oh, come off it, Law. Max is gone. Horner's gone. It's all a done deal. He's off to Mercedes. His brother-in-law Nelson Piquet Jr. said so on a podcast recently. That Horner was sacked for losing him. Yeah, I'm not going to be giving that much attention, because the last time I heard Nelson Piquet Jr.'s name was when I was studying for my script about drivers that were simply incompatible with Formula 1, so you might get the idea why I'm really not interested in that. Why on earth would Max Verstappen trust this sensitive information to anyone outside of his inner circle, that being Kelly, Jos, Raymond, etc., not Nelson Piquet Jr.? Right now, Max's leverage has never been higher. He's steering a familiar ship whilst Brackley suddenly looks far less tempting. A 3-year detour there isn't off the table though, but Red Bull are proving to be deathly serious about keeping the Dutchman. In his place, Helmut Marko regains influence, a long-time Verstappen ally. And it still doesn't guarantee that Max will stay out the course for the next 3 years, but it might at least buy the team some time to be able to prove to Max that they are serious and that they do have a plan to get him back up to the top, or that moving to Mercedes will simply not be worth it. And one thing I think Max will have to make it clear to all and sundry within the team is that he does not want simple media attention. He just wants the car fixed. And what Max has been noticing clearly the last couple of years is that Horner has not been really keeping his promises. He says so to the world, and that, oh, we'll give Max the best car possible, we'll give it a go. Oh God, I've realised I'm not going to be doing that catchphrase much longer. Or ever. Oh no! But yeah, Christian didn't deliver, and I'm pretty sure that Max will want them to deliver now. Okay, you might be wondering why I am so confident that I am wanting to make this video. Well, I think there are now few more reasons for Max just to stay where he is, instead of just uplifting himself, uprooting himself even, going to Mercedes and having to learn a completely different model in how to go racing, because Mercedes, Red Bull, they are notoriously different. Because as we saw with Lewis moving over to Ferrari, Max has been around the Red Bull fold since 2016 when he joined the senior team, and then a couple of years with Toro Rosso. It's a very big thing to do to make that sort of commitment after a decade or so, and having to completely rethink the way you go about things. But yes, Mercedes vibes are very different, and I feel like Max would feel quite restrictive, because just look at the whole situation about Bottas's butt stuff. I'm talking about the calendar. Just get your mind out the gutter. It's about potentially if Max were to break rank in order to think about his own race instead of what the team wants. But let's be real. Christian Horner's relationship with Jos was toxic. It supposedly peaking at Silverstone last weekend, where there were alleged blazing rows coming from the two men that might have triggered worried faces back in Salzburg. especially reports indicated that Horner had begun to report to Oliver Mintzlaff not that long ago, the CEO of Red Bull's Austrian side personally. And that beloved Thai side support that Christian has been holding on dear to the last couple of years, well, that's been diminished somewhat, with a couple of percentage points being sold by the Thai side over to an outside group of investors who may either be on the neutral side of things, on the fence for the time being, or they might just simply bend over backwards to what Austria is saying. With Horner gone, the temperature within Red Bull has dramatically decreased. It's a lot more chill right now. That bone of contention is simply non-existent. And the whole situation with Mercedes, Red Bull, it's all been completely rewritten. I feel like it's now gone back to square one because the game is completely changed. The political roadblock has been purged. And Laurent Mekies, far less volatile. He's an engineer first, not a spin doctor. And at Racing Bulls, he's fostered a calm, collaborative atmosphere and has given drivers real input into car development. For Max, who wants more say in the 2026 car, this is a massive shift. And as Martin Brundle put it, the change makes it more likely Max stays, and I personally agree. Yes, you could possibly counter that more and more people may choose to leave Red Bull if their main man Christian Horner, because as we found out with his departure message, many rank-and-file members of the Red Bull racing team really devoted their lives and their employment to the British team principal. This could mean other people could leave, and we've already seen a couple of casualties, but they've been toward the communication side of things. For Max, there'll be a little consequence because he's not caring about media hype or sensationalism or social media engagement. No, he just wants the car to go faster. And those two people that left in communications, that's not going to make the car go faster. And I think as long as the same people are there and Red Bull can hang on to them for just that little bit longer, that might make Max that little bit more happy, that you get the stability and continuity that Horner kept on talking about, but not really delivering. And maybe show some proactive ways of actually changing the car for the better and making it more manageable to drive instead of having such a narrow performance window. GP's still in place as Max's race engineer, and I believe he's taken on many responsibilities that Jonathan Wheatley vacated, so he will have a good say trackside, and that'll certainly be something Verstappen likes. And with Mekies having a more engineering background than Horner did, this might be a language that Max speaks and will like to speak, because even though you could argue that Horner has learnt a lot through osmosis over 20 years in terms of the stewardship of Red Bull Racing, and his time of being a racing driver himself, albeit not a very good one, and managing the likes of Arden Motorsport in the junior ranks, that is still something that pales into comparison about a guy who has pretty much earned his living in Formula One as an engineer. But what is up for debate, and sadly I think is the reality, is that the car is in big trouble, and Christian Horner over the last couple of years as the team leader has failed to come up with something that can easily stop this ship from sinking even further. And it's resulted in the team's morale being at an all-time low. And I think Mekies might have a better approach in that regard, in boosting morale and actually having an engineering nous to bring that car back up to speed again, or at least stop it from getting even worse. Perhaps Mekies would have taken more seriously, in a hypothetical scenario, the comments of Sergio Perez at the 2023 Spanish Grand Prix, when he initially flagged issues with the RB19, which meant that his own championship campaign was compromised, and then we went on to have the dominant year from Max Verstappen. Those comments were heard by Christian Horner, but through his own admission, chose not to react to it because, well, Max won that particular race and then went on to win 10 races in a row and break yet another record, so what did Checo's words matter? Things were going well, absolutely splendiferous. And it brought him a lot of positive attention as a team principal and cemented his place within Formula One history. It was all about his own ego as well. And we got what we got with Checo. His words were unanswered and he got dragged through the dirt by Helmut Marko, and his entire reputation was left in tatters, especially with the British media. And of course, we are wearing a bit of a hindsight t-shirt here, and that was a comment made by Aston Martin's TP Andy Cowell, and I really like that term, so I may borrow it every time and again. But it's these kind of decisions which a driver really values, that they feel heard, and simply put, back then, Perez was not being heard. Blinded by glory was Christian. Laurent may be more circumspect and more willing to sit down with Max and plot a plan of action which ensures the team corrects course and regains forward momentum after spinning its wheels with recent upgrades, which might have produced something, but in Max's own words, were just simply not enough. And then there is the matter of Helmut Marko. Ah yes, that fellow. With Horner gone, Marko regains his role as the main sporting decision-maker of the team, and he has been Max's strongest advocate since before his time at Red Bull, even back in Toro Rosso, and before that. And yeah, you might be arguing, well, some of the more unsavory headlines have come from Dr. Marko as well, Law, so surely they would want to diminish his powers and send him off to the sidelines or just put him out to pasture. And yes, you do have a point there. But many of the other negative headlines have only come about in clashes between Marko and Horner. One of them saying something, the other contradicts it, then the other claps back, and then we just get this spiral, which then Max absolutely detests as well, because it's, again, more negative attention. He just wants to race the damn car. And you might be worried with Mekies being that passive, it might mean that he might be completely torn to shreds, that Red Bull might not have room for a nice guy. Well, I don't think they really have an alternative at the moment. They've got a guy keen to step up to the plate. He's already demonstrated what he can do at racing bulls, so, you know, you just let the guy cook, people, come on. But needless to say, in the short term, Marko is a very happy bunny here, because he's got more job security again for the first time since Dietrich Mateschitz's passing. Marko also retains a direct line to the shareholders, especially the Austrian side of things, and he feels quite confident that Max will stay, because according to many reports he sees no reason for Verstappen to consider leaving. So there might be something to this, especially now with Christian no longer having a job there and Marko's path is left clear. And with him having more influence in the motorsporting side of things, even though he's got the junior stuff to be focusing on, I think that might be something that Max will like. Even though he is controversial, he might be a stable force with no one butting heads with, and therefore it might set out a path to be able to fix the RB21 at the very least. Max still regards Helmut highly, although you just got to remember that Max's own reputation is a formidable force of its own. A four-time world champion? He surely should really just think about what he wants personally, instead of deferring to someone that saw him through his own junior career. It's nice for them to still have a close relationship, a working one at that, but I think it's time now for Verstappen to just think really about what he wants. This might be an opportunity for him to do so. But then there were these comments from BBC's Andrew Benson via F1 Oversteer about Horner himself and how he might have become deluded in the eyes of Benson, that he couldn't see himself separate from the team, which in my mind makes him becoming the Ferrari team principal soon an impossibility. Christian is too self-important, much like how Adrian Newey might have been too self-important for the Scuderia's taste, and that's why the talks broke down. Because when you really look at it and you think about it from that point of view, can you imagine that Christian Horner would defer to the likes of Benedetto Vigna and John Elkann, the corporate side of Ferrari? You just get the same amount of drama all over again, and Ferrari don't need any of that right now. And can you imagine Lewis Hamilton putting up with someone like Christian Horner? I mean, with all of the negative headlines around Horner, unless he's cleared from all of these investigations next year, then I don't think any team will want to go anywhere near him. Well, maybe with the possible exception of Alpine, but that's a discussion for another video. And besides, Ferrari's got its own little power struggle at the moment, with the car company taking more influence of the F1 side of things, which is something that Enzo Ferrari simply didn't want. So again, that's for another video. But right now, what does Max Verstappen want? He wants a fast car, a familiar group of engineers, and death to car politics. And Marko might be able to also make the exit clause problem go away. Just take Max around the shoulder and say, "Oh, don't you worry, Max. I'll make sure that you have a good time here. The more control you have, not something that Toto can provide you. I shall give you an A-grade team next to Mekies." Basically, Horner's career demise has now made Marko less an embattled advisor and now into some kind of kingmaker. You may not like it, but I think that's what it is. It will give Helmut more authority to be able to continue this trend, and Max will be thinking, oh, thank God, finally, even though the reports of the powertrain is a little bit on the weak side. But hey, remember, there's no engine freeze next year. Sure, they might start off a little bit slow, but if they can develop at a really good lick, then Red Bull could be easily able to catch up to Mercedes and Honda and maybe Audi. So yes, I think Helmut is a little bit of a quiet winner here, and it really depends on how willing Mekies is to tolerate all of this, or he may decide to nip it in the bud and send Helmut packing back to Salzburg. So it depends on what may happen at the moment. And what Max may want at the moment is that the team don't eject yet another driver and rush any more juniors earlier than they should be for at least next year. That may mean Yuki Tsunoda's given more time to find his feet, and perhaps with the removal of Horner, the media frenzy about his potential departure may back off a little bit, since the new Red Bull will surely be very different, which might be a worry for some. It's an unknown. But what we do know is that even though Helmut Marko has been ruthless himself in the past, he has in recent times been quite forgiving to one Yuki Tsunoda. And to be fair, that has come through him getting to real hot water with Sergio Perez due to all of his comments throughout 2023, and it got so point to the border of bringing in regional and country stereotypes. Yuki's not going anywhere. He'll remain in that seat for the rest of the season, and that the team will be looking more closely at trying to fix his situation, where he is in an absolute death spiral at the moment, and losing all of the confidence he had just 3 months ago. Perhaps with Marko in a more secure position, and with the blessing of Verstappen, Yuki may stand to gain from this, and I haven't even gotten to the Mekies side of things. He's already got a supporter there. He's his biggest advocate, in fact. The Austrian has also told engineers, according to Planet F1, that he wants to stabilize Yuki by no longer setting up the car so hard towards Max, which removes a technical handicap that the Japanese driver has struggled with, especially back in Spielberg. And Max Verstappen himself, I can easily see him getting behind this, because surely he doesn't want to have yet another teammate in a few months' time or next season. He may want to just have a little bit more consistency. And he has actually been publicly defending Yuki. He publicly defended Liam to an extent, saying that he shouldn't be kicked out of the Red Bull program entirely. So you got to remember here, Max may like a certain way of doing things regarding racing, but he's certainly not cutthroat when it comes to his own teammates. He gets along fine with them. He called Yuki not a pancake, as in not calling him incompetent, and then Yuki himself, upon his promotion to Red Bull Racing, said that Max was a really, really nice guy. And when you look throughout various social media engagements and various Viaplay documentaries, Yuki and Max get on really well. There's no drama between them. There's no animosity. And for Max Verstappen, that's absolutely great. Because if he were to go to Mercedes, that in of itself is a little bit of a question mark. What happens? Does he get along with Kimi Antonelli? Well, maybe. He does like supporting rookies, as I touched upon earlier. But Toto has his own vision for the Italian, which may step on the toes of the Dutchman in certain scenarios, and that may therefore breed animosity potentially. Again, we'll have to wait and see. But if it were to be Russell and Verstappen, even though both drivers have said they wouldn't mind if they were paired together at the team, you gotta look at previous with Mercedes. It could blow up. That is an uncertainty, and Max doesn't want uncertainty right now. So yeah, the political winds are now blowing in Tsunoda's favour, because he gets along fine with Max, Marko's got his back, and Mekies has got his back. Yeah, I don't see Yuki being dropped, and you might be saying, well, wait a minute, he's attached to Honda right now. Well, a few months ago, I did say that Honda may still give him financial backing, but they don't manage him anymore. He is free to be managed by whoever he wants, and the management team that he's got since the start of the year have actually been pretty good in bolstering his confidence. So as you've been able to gather, I think Max now may have a few more reasons to just stay where he is and forge a brand new Red Bull Racing much more in his own ideal image of a racing team, without having to just up sticks and leave and start everything again for only maybe 3 seasons or so before he calls it quits in Formula 1. Now, of course, it's not all up to Max to do things all himself, because that's been a bugbear for the last couple of years. It's up to the team to fix the car and enact all of the things that Max wants. And you might be thinking, well, Max shouldn't have this level of control, but I don't think Max wants to have total control around himself. He just wants the team to function and function properly, which means that he doesn't have to do all the heavy lifting, because that, again, is another source of contention, that he has to do absolutely everything. You know the whole thing about, oh, Max won the 2023 Constructors all by himself. Yeah, that's nice to boast about, but he doesn't want that to be year after year after year. But yes, I think this is all a very major blow when it comes to negotiations with Mercedes. They might have been completely reset, or Max say, well, Red Bull are offering me this, can you offer me this? And Toto's like, well, I'm not sure, Max. That's a little bit more of an outreach, and oh dear, oh, I'm sweating. Oh no, I'm sweating buckets. Because Mercedes may also not offer the same open door policy Max enjoys at Red Bull. But let's not pretend prestige doesn't matter, because joining a team that built the Hamilton dynasty could appeal to his own legacy, especially if next year's power unit delivers. And under Toto Wolff, Mercedes have proven ruthlessly effective once momentum's on their side. But at Red Bull, Max is the undisputed headline act. At Mercedes, he'd be sharing the stage with other major shareholders, Mercedes and AMG itself, George or Antonelli. And that diluted spotlight could maybe lessen the appeal of Verstappen's own sponsors and for his father Jos, whose paddock presence Wolff may not welcome. And the question of whether or not Dr. Marko would go with Max Verstappen, that's a little bit up for debate here. Although, maybe Toto might want to welcome in a facsimile of one Niki Lauda, especially since Niki and Helmut were good friends for a very long time, childhood friends even, and they were racing colleagues back in the late 60s and early 70s, before Helmut's unfortunate accident. Red Bull have offered Max something compelling, and I think the only way that Mercedes can outdo that, top it, is by offering something quite drastic and something quite controversial. Offering Max a stake in the team, a financial stake. It would give Max more authority in terms of being a major shareholder, albeit a minor major one. I can't imagine Toto giving him all of his shares, or the likes of Daimler or Ineos, but it would certainly lock him in. I doubt that Mercedes would be willing for him to stick around for a couple of seasons, pocket some money, then make some money and take the money and run. But then again, Max isn't all about money, he just wants to go racing, dang it. It would also require FIA approval and maybe demonstrate from Max a long-term commitment past 2028, and maybe have some political sway? That isn't exactly Max's vibe though, politics, and also Wolff would still be the biggest shareholder, the one holding the cards really, and also Toto is relentless and ruthless himself when the team's image is at stake. Can you imagine Toto allowing Max to go about his GT3 team, going around the Nordschleife and potentially risking injury, or wanting to do other things aside from Formula 1? I doubt that. I really think that Toto would want Max to commit to Mercedes 100%. Finally, there is the matter of the Vermeulen quote from the top of the video. We want to return to the top in that regard, nothing changes. And as the Twitter poster says, what does that even mean? Well, it could mean three things. It could mean staying at Red Bull, getting into bed with Toto, or maybe a third way, out of Formula 1. Because as Max has said in various interviews, he wants to do so many things with the remainder of his active motorsport career, try out various categories, really experiment, kind of like what Fernando Alonso did in between his time at McLaren and then Alpine. He tried out all sorts of things, endurance, Dakar, and actually turned out to be a dab pair of hands, Daytona, INSA even. But I don't think that Max would want to be pegged within one series throughout his active career until he's in his late 30s. No, he said that he's not going to be sticking around for 400 races like his buddy Fernando. And again, he'd be approaching 300 Grand Prix starts by the time we get to 2028, at least 270, 280. He'd still be considered one of the longest serving F1 drivers in its history. That doesn't really appeal to him. Because as far as he's concerned, he pretty much did everything he wanted to do in Formula 1 when he won his first title. He has said, though, that his focus is on F1 until at least 2028 for sure, but then after that, it would depend on what projects were available and which of those projects would actually interest him. So, okay, what would he do at that time? Well, as we all know now, he owns Verstappen.com Racing. They're branching out into various series, including GT World and GT3. He's also gone along with his buddy Franz Hermann around the Nordschleife to get some sort of license, I think, so he could take part in 24-hour races, so Le Mans could be on the cards here. And I don't think you need me to tell you, he loves GT3 cars. GT racing is definitely his bag, although endurance in general is something that is equally appealing. And in his own ideal mind, he would like to be able to share Formula 1 duties with GT3 duties as often as possible, as he said. And also, something that Mercedes may not be offering right now, at least in terms of the top tier of WEC, there could also be the matter of hypercars, because Ford is coming into the hypercar circle for 2027, and if Red Bull Ford continue at a pace and their deal continues with Red Bull powertrains, then Max could easily find a way into the hypercar division, providing that Le Mans and Formula 1 aren't clashing in terms of the calendar. Because as we've seen with sim racing, Max can commit alongside an F1 weekend, which Crofty last year did decide to poke fun at and say that it was a complete liability, but Max isn't going to listen to what you're saying, Crofty, in that regard. No, he can easily do it. He can handle it. And also there's a matter of simple weariness, because Max has said, like many other drivers, 24 races in an F1 calendar is a lot. And in WEC, there's only, I think, about 8, which is far more agreeable, although the amount of training is a lot. It's certainly probably less intense than it would be for a full Formula 1 season. And as we've been seeing quite obviously, Max is a bit of an introvert, plain and simple. He likes to go racing, do his basic duties, and then go home. So with Horner gone, Max's biggest obstacle is out of the way, and Helmut Marko gains ground. Red Bull just proved they'll reshuffle the house to keep their star. And Mercedes, they can offer money or maybe shares, but that comes with Wolff's rulebook, a new engine, and a steep learning curve in just a short space of time. And Max, I think he values influence and legacy more than simple riches. And speaking of legacy, Sauber's own legacy in F1 is looking to be wound up in a rather respectable manner, an upper midfield contender rather than a whimpering backmarker like we all feared last year. To find out why I think this is Audi's opening statement and maybe a sign of things to come that this might not actually be a bad operation next year, watch this video next, straight after this one.